Is there any concern with B9 3.0T Stage 1 E85 torque values being greater than the ZF8 rated torque limits, rated at only 405 foot-pounds?
Yeah, I mean, those limits are, I mean,
This is a
we
limit where in some manual.
they've always said no. That's their standard. So it's like it's a HP55, so it'd be normally a 550
Okay.
newton meter rated transmission. But I mean, if you're
That
gonna go by those numbers, then the engine's only rated for whatever the factory is. I mean, there's only so much you can go by based on the number of the published for the particular
yes.
car.
So when you see ratings like that, out in the world, um, this is imagine your your ZF and you created a transmission, and literally like Audi's standard for like for example a company like Audi, their standard is out of 1 million cars there can be less than like two failures. I mean that's their standard. So when ZF comes out and says this is rated for X amount of power, that's the standard they're going for. It's an extremely stringent standard. It's basically the highest standard you can go by. Where ZF is saying if you want to never have a failure, which 2 or 3 out of 1 million is basically never, then you cannot exceed this amount of torque. Now we don't know what the failure rate goes to at 600 foot-pounds, which is what we've pushed it to. Um, we know that in our testing, which has been extensive, that there's been no issues.
Yep.
We now have hundreds and hundreds of customers running it. There's been no issues. So we kind of take that OEM rating with a grain of salt, and we just go test it ourselves.
Yeah,
And we determine from an aftermarket point of view what can be pushed to.
and it goes all the way back, like the DQ 250. That's only rated for 250 newton meters.
Which is ridiculous because they can take like 500-600.
Yeah, easily. I mean,
easily.
we push more than that through
Yeah.
them, regularly. So yeah, again, it's
Now we do have some data points. We've heard of a number of RS6 failures
on the 4 liter stuff
on the
yeah.
4.0T, which we're now talking probably 1,000 foot-pounds of torque or more. And from the 4.0T, it's a bigger, broader torque peak than even a 3.0T could produce. So we're not concerned about it, and
We haven't had any
obviously-
reason to be
Yeah.
to question it at this point.
And that's a very strong transmission. If you look at the ZF8 and all the applications it's being used in, it's a tough transmission. So, and it's why Audi went to it, because they wanted a stronger transmission. And this is kind of similar to how the B8 3.0T supercharger. What's the RPM it's rated to?
That's a good question. Honestly, that one, everybody keeps publishing that like 23,000 or something RPM, but that's honestly for these smaller, that's the maximum RPM of that given series of charger, not the exact one that's in the Audi.
Yeah.
But it's maybe 20 some thousand.
But people are running them at what, like 25?
Yeah, no, well over that.
Yeah. So I mean, there's the standard from the OEM 0.01% failure, level of significance, and then there's what's acceptable in the aftermarket. And when you tune your car and you increase the power, you're pushing the risks of everything. I mean, you're pushing the risks of going faster. You could crash because you end up going a lot faster than
Right.
than you can control the car. And this is really common where someone takes a factory vehicle and doubles the horsepower and they crash it really soon after. I was talking to someone who sells, someone who is involved with someone who sells Lamborghinis, and they were this anecdotal, but they were saying something like 30% of all the cars they sell get totaled within the first month because it's some guy with a lot of money who has no idea how to control a 600 horsepower supercar, and they crash it. I sold my 996 Turbo to someone on the East Coast, and they crashed it like after like
wasn't very
a
fun,
month,
yeah.
and that was a really fast car. It was a lot to handle. I had no trouble handling it, but they crashed it pretty quickly. So